Sir Lance Ege will open our program with a prayer.
Okay, let us all rise and let us all bow down our heads for a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we give you back, Lord, all the glory and honor and the praise for being our Creator and our Redeemer. Heavenly Father, we thank you, dear Lord, for the gift of the Sabbath that you have given us this day to enjoy, to remind us, Lord, that all of life comes from you and that all that we have, Lord, is a gift coming from you. We thank thee, Lord, for this Adventist Scientist Convention, in that we are able, Lord, to discover new things and deeper things, Lord, about the mysteries that you have given us through science. And so we thank you, dear Lord, for gathering us here together, and help us, Lord, that our minds will be quick and alert and receptive, Lord, to the things that we will be listening to today, that we may be able, Lord, to discover more of the gems of truth that you have bestowed to each and every one of us. Thank you, dear Lord, for your love. Thank you for your grace. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Good afternoon, everyone. You know, I am so happy that you are here because as the clock continues to tick to the end of the program, I notice that there are lesser people in here. Maybe because we have information overload, or maybe because today is the Sabbath and now is the time for lay activities. Because this morning we have Sabbath school. And in the past, it's Sabbath school and lay activities. So now, well, anyway, this afternoon we are going to start with video presentation of Dr. Fleming. Yesterday, I shared with you the link for the file at Amazon. Today is the last day to get it for free, but today you cannot do it because it's Sabbath. So if you need help, we are still around. I can share with you the file that we have downloaded. Because when he gave us the link, he said it is okay to download the particular file, convert it to another format so that it can be easy to read from, because of different file formats for the ebook. So, before Dr. Fleming's presentation will be played on screen by our media team, let me just read a little bit about Dr. Fleming. Give me a minute. Okay. You see, this is the thing with technology. When everything else fails, you have nothing written on hand. So please give me a few minutes. Okay. Dr. Monte Fleming is the postdoctoral research associate at Loma Linda University, and his current research is in developing a mathematical model to interpret the positional conditions of fluvial cross-bedded sandstone, understanding the development of vortices in fluvial channels and their effect on pothole formation. His past research projects are geomorphology of potholes in the Navajo sandstone in Arizona, studying sediment removal from potholes in the Navajo sandstone, geomorphologic mapping of rock window mesa in Chinle Valley, Arizona, and sedimentology of marine vertebrate burial in the Miocene Pisco Formation, Peru, and stratigraphy of the Miocene Pisco Formation. Okay, so his past experiences is a postdoctoral research fellow. Now he is a postdoctoral research associate. And from 2015 to 2016, he was a high school chemistry teacher. He finished his PhD in Geology, Earth Science at Loma Linda University. And before that, he finished his Master's of Science in Geology, Earth Science at Loma Linda University as well. And he also holds a Master of Art in Music Theory and Composition from University of California. So without further ado, let us now give time to Dr. Fleming with his video presentation that we will listen together. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Monty Fleming. I'll be talking about the science of geology and how it relates to biblical chronology. The big question is, what does the Bible say about creation and the flood, because both of these events have come under a lot of attack. So here we have the chronologies from Adam to Abraham, the genealogies from Adam to Abraham, in Genesis 5 and Genesis 11. Genealogies are found in Genesis 5 and 11, and of course that includes the chronology. They're also found in 1 Chronicles 1, and that one is interesting because it provides the names of multiple sons. And the chronologies are also given in Matthew 1, going back to Abraham, all the way from Jesus to Abraham, and in Luke 3, from Jesus back to Adam. Now, Adam is mentioned, of course, many times. Moses mentioned him in Deuteronomy. Job, of course, mentioned him, and that's an interesting mention because it talks about the fig leaves in Job, actually. Not directly, but that's what Job was talking about, of course. And of course, Paul mentioned Adam several times. Talked about how in Adam we all die, how the first man was Adam, and how God created the first man. He was as a living soul. Paul specifically says Adam was formed first, and then Eve, and then Jude, probably Jesus' brother, said Enoch was the seventh from Adam. Mentions of Noah. Isaiah mentions Noah, where God says, I've sworn that the waters of Noah should no more go over the earth. Ezekiel mentions Noah. Matthew mentions Noah. Luke, Hebrews, Peter. So when we're talking about hermeneutics, of course, we need to think about what the author intended to convey. We need to think about the context and just what was going on, what was the author trying to address. And we need to think about how this should inform and instruct us right now. So how did Jesus read the Old Testament? How did the writer of Chronicles read Moses? How did Luke read them? Now, the answer is pretty obvious. They treated them as if they were just historical documents and historical figures. And they treated them as if they were, in fact, just part of their personal history. Now, many people would say this is not a sophisticated way to read the Bible, but are we trying to be sophisticated, or are we trying to be like Jesus? So what are the consequences of giving up a straightforward reading of the text? Well, think about that. What's the point of giving up the most straightforward reading of the text? So I was in a class at church, and it was being taught by a very famous physician. And the point of the class was to get everybody to agree, to convince everyone that Genesis was not correct. That whoever the author, he probably didn't think it was Moses, but whoever wrote Genesis didn't want us to believe that the earth was 6,000 years old. That's what he was trying to say. That was part of what he was trying to say. And he was certainly saying that according to science, there's no way we can accept the biblical chronology. And someone asked him, said, "Do you realize what the consequences are of what you're teaching?" And very quickly he said, "Yes, but if we don't accept the evolutionary time scale, we won't have a seat at the table of scientific discussions." I would say in order to really be accepted at that table, we need to agree that, or at least speak and act as though the universe created itself. God had nothing to do with it. Life just happened as a result of chemical processes. God did not design it. All life on Earth evolved from the first living cell. God was not involved, and these processes happened over billions of years. So just to clarify, one doesn't have to claim to be an atheist to be given a seat at the table of scientific discussion, but one does have to speak and present their research as though God never does anything. So it's invoking God's intervention in the universe that is taboo. So, where do the scientific data actually point, though? So here are a few answers in a nutshell. Did the universe create itself? There's a really good book on this. It's called Privileged Planet. And even if you don't accept the Big Bang model, the conclusion of the book is astonishing. It's very clear that the universe is carefully designed for life, for us specifically. And I would say that God balanced everything necessary for our survival on an absolute knife edge so that science would unmistakably point straight back to Him. The Bible writers said the heavens declare the glory of God, that God's work is evident from the beginning. This is true even if you accept the Big Bang model. And many of you have probably heard of Christopher Hitchens. He was having a conversation in a car with somebody, and they were recording it, and the person asked him, "Is there anything that makes you wonder? Is there anything that gives you pause about being an atheist?" Specifically is what he was asking. And Christopher Hitchens said, "The fine-tuning of the universe." Like, it really looks like it was designed. Okay, did life come about by chance? No, absolutely not. The laws of chemistry are absolutely contrary to the generation of living cells from minerals. There is no chance. There's absolutely no chance. The probability of it happening is, in fact, zero. God carefully engineered life so that it could protect itself from normal chemical processes. But if there is no life, then the chemical processes won't allow it to happen. Okay, did all life evolve from a single cell? Again, no. We can see from science that genetic mutations degrade genetic information and that natural selection destroys genetic information. So natural selection, it just kills organisms. And that's not a good way to encourage diversity. Both of these processes are pushing life downhill and not up. So I would add that unless Jesus comes and gives us glorified bodies, we will be in trouble, and eventually we'll cease to exist. But fortunately, we have the glorified body to look forward to. Okay, have billions of years passed since the creation of the earth? I'm a geologist, and this is a book that I wrote recently on this topic, and I'll be using parts of it for the rest of this presentation as we talk about the science of what geology actually says about time. And I want you to have this resource. I'll be offering the ebook for free for certain days in August. So the goal is to contribute to a new scientific model and not just tear down the secular model. So you can see a couple of puzzle pieces here, and these pieces, if I ask you to, what do you see? What, describe for me what this puzzle piece is. It's very difficult until you have the cover of the box. And now all of a sudden you can see, okay, that's probably a piece of a bubble, that's part of a container with some French writing on it. It brings things into perspective. There are a lot of puzzle pieces that do not fit the secular mainstream scientific perspective. They get pushed under the rug, they get ignored, people try to wave them away in one way or another. Well, in this book I've brought out several of them, and I'll be talking about a few right now. But the book actually contains 9 or 11, depending on how you count, arguments for a young Earth. And I wanted them to be accessible and verifiable. So the first is coastal erosion. So if you go to the internet, you type in what is the erosion rate of the California coast, you get an answer 0 to 42 centimeters per year. So we'll average that and call it 21 centimeters per year. If you ask what's the erosion rate of the east coast of the United States, the answer will be about 80 centimeters per year. So how wide is the United States? About 4,200 kilometers, depending on where you measure. And that is 420 million centimeters. Well, that's a lot of centimeters, but if you divide it by 80 plus 21, you actually end up, or 80 plus 20, you end up with an erosion rate that would destroy the United States in 4.2 million years. Well, 4.2 million years sounds like a lot of time, but if you think about how much time evolutionists claim the Earth has been around, that is a tiny drop in the bucket. And again, it would totally destroy the United States. Now, this process is active all around the world. Here's a cliff. This was eroded away by the sea. The sea used to be out a long ways from that. Another cliff. All the erosion of that cliff face was caused by the ocean, just eating away. This was here in Florida. A hurricane hit the coast, and it washed out the land underneath this house. And same hurricane washed out some land under this house, but fortunately under just the porch area. Coastal erosion consumes over $500 million in property each year in the United States. So it's a significant problem that cities have to deal with. Lighthouses showcase this quite well. The Southeast Lighthouse in Block Island, Rhode Island, it was moved by expert house movers, and the reason they moved it was because it was built quite a ways back from the coast, but the erosion rate is 69 centimeters per year, and it started to threaten the lighthouse. The coast started to wash away, it got too close to it, and so they hired a company to actually move the lighthouse to preserve it. The same with this lighthouse in Massachusetts. The coastal erosion rate was 61 centimeters per year. So again, that doesn't sound like much, but over 100 years, that's, you multiply 61 centimeters times 100, that's 61 meters. And somebody might say, oh, well, maybe there was a lot of coast and it's been eroded slowly over millions of years. But if you look at the United States, you can see, or look at North America here, you can see that the continent is not that big. Most of the continent has not been washed out to the ocean yet. There's only that little bit along the coast, the light-colored area right next to the coast, where we've experienced that erosion. So that can't be the answer. The much better answer is that it's just simply not that old. It hasn't been here for very long. Only a few thousand years seems about right. Okay, different type of erosion. We'll call it basinal erosion. And this is how fast the land gets washed out to the ocean by the rain. And so if we want to calculate this, we can ask the question, how much land is on Earth? And it's about 148 million square kilometers. What is the average elevation of the Earth's continents? And that's about 835 meters. And how much sediment? How much sediment does the Amazon River carry? And it's about 0.33 kilometers cubed every year. How much sediment do all the world's rivers transport annually out to the ocean? About 5.6 cubic kilometers per year. And then the density of the Earth's crust is another thing that we need to know to do these calculations. So if this didn't make sense, ask one of your math buddies or physics people to sort this out. Then you just punch these into a calculator, and you can see that all the land on Earth could wash out to the sea in 22 million years. Now, something that's even crazier is that if you ask engineers how much sediment collects behind the dams of the world, they'll say, like if you Google that and ask the internet, you'll pull up articles saying that it's about 50 cubic kilometers per year. Well, that means that in only 2.5 million years, all of Earth's land could end up behind existing dams, were such a thing possible. Clearly it's not, but just to give you an idea of how fast things are really washing down the rivers. And you may be wondering if the 22 million years is correct, and I actually think it's not. I think that the actual value is quite a bit lower, and in a couple of very old scientific papers, some people studied how much sediment rivers carried, and they came to the conclusion that the United States, North America, would wash out to the ocean in about 10 million years. And that may be also an underestimate. But anyway, you can see again, this is a very small drop in the bucket of what is supposed to be the deep time, or the time that evolution is supposed to have needed to happen. So here's some erosion. This happened pretty quickly, and this is just a very common thing around the world. This is some erosion, and this was a cool one. The reason I took this picture, the reason I used this picture, is because these structures look a lot like these structures. This is a national park here in the United States. This is Bryce Canyon. And here we have very similar structures, but on a very small scale. You can see how big the grass is right next to it. So this is Bryce Canyon, and something interesting about it is that it's actually still being eroded. All of the land on Earth is either being eroded or there's some deposition happening. And you can see that it's being eroded just looking at this tree right here. If I zoom into the tree, you can see that the tree started growing, and then the ground underneath it was eroded away, and the roots stayed in the ground. So again, it's a slow process, year by year, usually, unless there's a big flood. But these slow processes over millions of years, they would really add up to a huge amount of erosion. So the economic impact of soil erosion in the United States costs the nation about $37.6 billion each year in productivity losses. And damage from soil erosion worldwide is estimated to be $400 billion per year. So again, that's a lot of damage from just water washing sediment out to the ocean. Okay, now here's something from my research in the Pisco Formation. And if you go to Wikipedia, you can see that the Pisco Formation is about 640 meters thick, and they claim that it was deposited over 13 million years. Pisco is an amazing formation. It has a lot of whales in it, dolphins, cormorants, penguins, the occasional giant sloth. the fossils, of course. These are all fossilized organisms. Huge fish, lots of fish scales from all kinds of fish. We find megalodon teeth in it, just other shark teeth, stingray teeth, really interesting creatures all through it. And okay, so 640 meters of material deposited over 13 million years. And if we do the math, that is 1 centimeter of deposition every 200 years. And if you do the math some more, you realize that that is 1 grain of sand thick every 10 years. That's it. Just 1 layer of sand, one sand grain thick every 10 years. So is that reasonable in any way? Well, the study location is here. You can see Peru and kind of in the southern part on the coast. And this is what it looks like. It's an amazing area. There aren't really plants. There is one kind of plant that grows out there that we saw a lot of. It's a really pretty flowering plant. But the area is so dry that the plant doesn't even have roots. It just kind of sits on top of the ground. And it collects mist through its leaves. It doesn't really rain out here. And so that's actually very good for geologists. It is very dusty though, and so here we are, we taped our glasses up so that we could keep working through the sandstorm. Here we are, you can't see what we're working on very clearly, but there's a whale and it's actually sticking out of the cliff face. And if you look where my foot is, I'm actually standing on a layer of volcanic ash. And so that layer of volcanic ash comes right up to a whale. And we're trying to clean the whale off so we can see it clearly. So what we came to with this particular whale is that the whale died and it landed on the bottom of the ocean, landed on the sediment, and then some more sediment was deposited, and then that volcanic ash layer landed on the whale's back and slid down. Some more sediment landed on top, and then the whale decomposed and the sediment got compacted, and it left a gap in that volcanic ash layer as a result. I think this is the most logical solution to what we found there. So that's really interesting. In other words, all of that sediment was deposited before the whale decomposed, and the whale decomposition only takes a few weeks. Okay, there's more though. This is another whale, just so you can kind of see it. The skull is off to the right. You can see the ribs, and you can see kind of the flipper bone, one of the flipper bones there, kind of closest to the camera. This whale was died, and it fell into a channel that had been cut in the bottom of the seafloor there. And you can see, I cleared off more of the slope, and you can see these other channels that had been eroded into the seafloor and then filled in with volcanic ash. The white material is volcanic ash. So again, these were very tumultuous conditions. There was a lot going on here. This is baleen from the whales, and the baleen, this is interesting. There's actual protein in the baleen, and baleen is actually one of the first things to fall out of a whale's mouth when it dies. It's not attached with roots like your teeth, and so when the whale dies, the baleen can fall out within a few days or even less time. So this was published in the Journal of Geology. And here's another whale. You can see the mouth of the whale right here. I'm squatting behind it. You can see the baleen in the mouth, and you can see that baleen is all just right there intact. That whale died and sunk and got buried very quickly. So to summarize the Pisco Formation, We have rapid deposition evident in sediments and fossils. We have no evident long breaks in deposition, and we have very little bioturbation. I didn't talk about bioturbation, but you know that there's crabs, there's worms, there's other organisms that burrow through the soil, and when they burrow, they disturb the sediment. All around the world, the sediment is laid down in these nice, beautiful layers, and the bioturbation will destroy all of those layers. But we don't really find a lot of that in Pisco Formation. So what we see is one layer on top of another, deposited very quickly in quick succession. And we don't see erosion between the layers. We don't see long periods of time where nothing happened. We see some areas where a little bit of time passed, but not much, because we still, in those layers, we still find a lot of fossils. And fossils just don't last very long on the ocean floor. They get eaten by other organisms, they decay in all kinds of ways. So what we see in the Peace Corps Formation is, again, one layer on top of another, with all these beautiful fossils in between, all the way up through the formation. And it really doesn't look like millions of years of deposition. It really doesn't look like the sediment was coming down 1 grain thick every 10 years. What it does look like is that there was one storm after another, and it just kept depositing the sand and silt and these diatoms, and just covering up these fossils so quickly that they didn't have time to break down and decay very much. So one of the reasons I wanted to talk about the Peace Corps Formation is because, first, I mean, it's a beautiful formation. I love working there, but it's also similar to many other formations all around the world, where when we look at the geology, we have one layer on top of another, sometimes with fossils, sometimes not, but we can look at these layers and we can see how one was deposited and then another very quickly, and then another very quickly, and they're often catastrophically deposited, and it's very difficult to imagine long breaks or a lot of time in between those layers. There just is not evidence of that. And so for me as a geologist, it's actually much easier to fit the geology of the earth into a short chronology, into biblical chronology, than it is to fit it into the evolutionary chronology. So in summary, remember that the scientific data are pieces of a puzzle, and that in order to correctly interpret each piece, we need a guide. We need that puzzle box. Our guide is the Bible, and nothing makes sense without it. God has given us these amazing promises, and why would we want to give those up? Well, some people would say, oh, we have to give them up because science. Science has proven that the Bible can't be true. It's not true. It's a crazy myth. But what I hope you can see is that when we use the Bible as our guide, we come to this beautiful and coherent understanding of creation and how the Bible is in fact true, and how science actually does make sense in the framework, in the context of the Bible.
Before we proceed to the second lecture for this afternoon, let us have an energizer. Okay, before we will sing the song Lean Forward, Lean Backward, everybody knows the song, right? Yes, okay, everybody please stand up. Okay, stand up first, and then please shake your hands first. Then with shoulders. And then whole body. Whole body. Shake. Okay, thank you. Please take your seats. Okay, let us warm up. Lean forward, lean backward, to the left, to the right. Stand up, sit down, to the left, to the right. Stand up, sit down, to the left, to the right. Love lifted me. Love lifted me. When nothing else could help, love lifted me. Love lifted me. Love lifted me. When nothing else could help, love lifted me. 5 times faster. Lean forward, lean backward, to the left, to the right. Stand up, sit down, to the left, to the right. Lean forward, lean backward, to the left, to the right. Stand up, sit down, to the left, to the right. Love lifted me. Love lifted me. When nothing else could help, love lifted me. Love lifted me. Love lifted me. When nothing else could help, love lifted me. Okay, thank you. May I call on Ma'am Maiden Romanilios as she will be introducing our second lecturer for this afternoon. Okay, let us give the time to Sir Dr. Arlex Iliano.
Hello, magandang hapon sa lahat, mga kapatid. Ayan, na-energize na po ba tayo? Ayan, so kahapon na-introduce na po ako. I was introduced yesterday, so hindi na po kailangan. Before that, ang Geoscience Research Institute gave us some pins. Meron po akong pastor dalawa na dinala. And I would like to ask a question. If you like this is a nice one. Gold. Yung gold, oh. Mahal to. Gold, eh. All right. The title of my talk is Close Encounter with Extinct Species. Ayan. By the way, singular or plural, species, no? Walang species. That's a difference with science and English. All right? So there's no term as species, always species. Okay, so can you guess what is that species or a species that I will discuss this afternoon? Ayan. Any guess? Madali lang yan. Ayan, ma'am. Ano po yon? Ayan, ito po. Ayan. Ito po, motorita. Iba talaga ang aking estudyante from Lipa, ano. Ayan. Magaling. Diniscuss ko na ba to? Hindi naman. Ayan, ma'am, ilagay mo to sa iyong kwan, oh, kasi gold yan. Pag nakita ni pastor yan, meron ka pang incentive. Hindi po ibang klase sa akin, hindi dinosaur. Alright, so close encounter with extinct species, lessons and insights. Ayan. Oh, yan na pala siya. So this picture was taken at the front side of the Southwestern Adventist University in Texas. Ayan. I'm quite privileged to be there for a short time because our former president would like us to go somewhere. Then during my sabbatical, maybe the GRI mentioned that there will be a dinosaur dig somewhere in the US, and he forwarded to me the message, and I said, yes sir, I'm in sabbatical this summer, maybe I can join. Ayan, so that's the story. And this picture is with Dr. Art Chadwick, one of the researchers as well as professor at Southwestern University, as well as also a part of the Geoscience Research Institute. He wrote a book, Fate, Reason, and Earth's History, with Leonard Brand. they toured me at the Loma Linda University with Leonard Brand. It's also free. Pastor, this one, I think it's free today, no? As well as yesterday. So this is Dr. Art Chadwick. Formerly, his field is also molecular biology, but later on, he moved to paleontology. Our work during that time was also featured in Adventist World. These are some of my friends, no, at the site in Wyoming, something west part of the U.S. And this is the beautiful area, full of grasses. Ayan. So when you are lost, you cannot see actually because they are all full of grass. Wala kang landmark. So our group will be given a walkie-talkie so that when you are lost, you know where you are. Ayan. So this is the site, and we have these 2 tents as our area for eating as well as for bathing. So the question is, did dinosaurs really exist? Well, whether you like it or not, some of our Christian friends, they are not fully convinced that dinosaurs existed. Ayan. So how can we maybe narrow or lessen the gap between science and faith with regards to the existence of dinosaurs? Another question is, do dinosaurs disprove the accuracy of the Bible? Or do dinosaurs confirm the integrity of the Bible? So those are some of the questions that we hope to answer in this presentation. How teachers and pastors explain dinosaurs with a biblical paradigm and in a faith-affirming way. So there are some points that we must know in order to explain well, no, to our brethren. So that we must not base on assumptions or just hypotheses and so on and so forth. We have to base our views on scientific data. In 1822, Dr. Gideon Mantell discovered the fossilized teeth coming from Iguanodon. It's now an extinct dinosaur. We've also privileged to visit the nearby museums in South Dakota, right? I think it's Black Museums, and they have dinosaurs there. Something like articulated fossils from T-Rex, no, is now present in Chicago Field Museum. So Dr. Owen coined the word dinosaur, means fearfully great lizards or terribly great lizards. And by the way, we have a lot of dinosaur species that were identified, no? More than 700 of them, all right? And basically they have diverse structures and interesting characteristics. So the question is, who made them? All right? Maybe as Christians we know, right? However, evolutionists, they believe that accidents of nature produced dinosaurs 165 million years ago. That's what their common perspective about dinosaurs. But as Christians, the Bible provides us information on the creation of these massive